Hello and welcome to the KPI Institute's webinar, KPI Implementation Project Plan. My name is Andrei Costa and I will be your host for today along with our presenter, Raluca Vintila. This webinar is part of a series of free educational materials that aim to enhance the knowledge and know-how of those interested, while also creating a bridge between us as a company and you, our public. The KPI Institute is a research organization specialized in business performance. It operates research programs in 12 practice domains, each linked to a certification course, ranging from strategy and KPIs to employee performance, and from customer service to innovation performance. Today, 14 years after the KPI Institute was created, we can proudly say that our products and services have reached professionals on 5 continents, and that our public comprises a worldwide community of 84,000 members online and 28,000 registered companies on smartkpis.com. In today's webinar, you will have the opportunity of comparing your performance management system or any concepts you might have against a popular service implementation model promoted and operated by the KPI Institute according to the KPI management framework. It will be delivered by Raluca Vintila, management consultant with the KPI Institute. Some of the most significant consultancy projects Raluca has been involved in include the following: performance management system architecture design for the organizational, division, and individual level, and organizational KPI selection for organizations operating in the oil and gas, transportation, telecommunications, and education industries, to name just a few. She has also delivered training courses, conference presentations, business simulations, and other webinars related to the use of KPIs. This presentation lasts between 30 to 40 minutes. Please feel free to ask any questions you might have during the webinar, as they will be answered at the end of the presentation in our Q&A session. Enjoy the KPI Institute's webinar, KPI Implementation Project Plan. Now I would like to invite Raluca to begin her presentation.
Thank you very much, dear Andre, for the introduction. Good day, everyone, and except saying good morning or good evening, depending on the time zone you are locating in at the moment. I hope you will enjoy the time we're going to spend together discussing on the topic KPI Implementation Project Plan. To be a little more precise, we are going to cover today a part that we can consider the arguments in gaining the buy-in for such a project implementation. Why should we bother doing this? Because at the end of the day, it's an added effort to the team that is in charge of it. We are going to explore the structure of such a plan and the activities, the sub-activities that should be included, based, of course, on our methodology and based on the framework that we are currently operating with. The key deliverables, or actually the tools that we are promoting and implementing, the project Gantt, or the time frame, and activities that can be deployed either within a certain number of weeks, months, or maybe years, as we are going to explore in some of the case studies that I would like to share with you. The fifth point is the stakeholders and the governance of this project. The governance implying the group of people or the people that are administering this project. And of course, we are going to close up with the questions and answer, which I encourage you to use as per the time that we have allocated. To summarize, we're going to understand the whole image of what a KPI implementation plan implies. We're gonna analyze or explore some of the projects we've been implementing up to this moment. Of course, it's gonna be just a preview of some of the most extensive projects, but I think they are gonna be relevant enough to be discussed, and as well to go along the key tools that belong to the system. The first aspect refers to why should we bother implementing KPIs. Now, in this moment, you can create a parallel in your mind. In case you haven't implemented up to this moment a KPI, a PM performance management system based on KPIs, you can ask yourself, why should we bother in this moment implementing implementing this project. Or if you find yourself in a scenario where you have already implemented a PMS, performance management system based on KPIs, you can ask yourself, what was in our mind the moment we have started this project? Well, mainly, the moment we ask the professionals we've been working with what would be the main reasons or the main benefits actually that they see behind the implementation of KPI projects, the main words that come up, that pop up within these discussions are clarity, focus, and improvement. And because they seem to be a little too theoretical from our point of view, we've been exploring the clarity, the focus, and the improvement a little more in depth. For instance, what they claim as clarity, they say, given the implementation of a KPI project plan, it's very clear where the organization, the department, the team, or the individual is at the moment. For instance, having the KPI results, having the data available, can give you a glimpse on where are we at the moment as a current status of the organization in regards, of course, to performance or to desired directions. It's very clear. You can't cheat the numbers. The numbers will give you a clear image. Now, the focus comes in regards to what matters for the future, like we focus on what matters. It's not by accident the fact that they are called KPIs, key performance indicators. They are the key, the ones that we have established, they are the key for our strategic directions. So it's not just a metric, it's not regular data, it's not about statistics. It's something that we are focusing on, and we are not putting the numbers on a piece of paper. We are operating with it. We are making decisions based on these data. So it becomes a part of our reality. It's not like we are randomly working as an organization, but we end up thinking like, where did we start our journey here, and when or where will it stop in regards to the desired state of evolution? Well, in this case, the focus is sort of lost, but we are driven by what is key and what has been defined as being the key for an organization, and we allocate the efforts and the time to get there. And the improvement comes from the perspective of the integration of the previous two. You know where you are, you know where you want to be, so there is a lot of space for improvement, or preferably it's a lot of space where you can cover the gap in regards to current performance and desired performance. I will not insist on the others because they come along with the clarity, focus, and improvement, engagement, communication, and learning. But what matters the most is that the people that are working, the professionals, the practitioners in our database, the professionals and practitioners involved in our consulting projects, in our training projects, that's what they claim as being the top: the clarity, the focus, and of course the improvement. On the other hand, implementing a KPI project, I think it overcomes the challenges that most of the organizations are facing in regards to performance. What you have here in this graph is the ranking on the most challenging aspects that has resulted in the last report or survey that we have addressed. Is the data gathering, KPI selection, and target setting. These are the three top challenges the moment we operate such programs, such projects. Well, I would say that besides the benefits, like seeing the pluses of why we should bother dedicating the efforts, I would say that this project, the KPI implementation project, is also covering the minuses that might exist within the organizations, considering also these topics identified from people's practice, from professionals and practitioners' practice. So clarity, focus, and improvement, and at the same time minimizing the challenges in data gathering, KPI selection, and target setting. By the time we are going to cover the structure and activities, you will see that each of these challenges will be addressed in a certain moment in time within the project, and we are going to see dedicated activities and sub-activities to these challenges. Going to the zoom out image, a KPI implementation project plan based on the KPI Institute's methodology would cover 4 main areas. 4 main areas as per what you can see on the left side and on the right side of the screen, for instance, the cluster number 1, 2, and 3, but as well the cluster number 14 on the right side, they belong to project management related activities. So strictly project related activities. What is located in between, so from 4 to 13, in this area we have the clusters related to performance management and to the part of KPI's appearance in organizational life. We're going to take them one by one to explore a little more in depth what they cover, because I think it's not enough just to remain to this zoom out image, because this kind of models we might ended up seeing, but to go into the more granular in order to find the answers for, okay, getting it from 1 to 0. What do from 0 to the last, from the first to the last activity? What do I need to do as a professional, as a practitioner, to implement when I'm talking about the implementation of a KPI project? Well, this would be a little more an image with an extension on its content. It's a little more detailed than the first one. The clusters, of course, are the same. It starts with audit as the main activity. Imagine the audit as the moment when you go through an organization and you find out what is going on at the moment in that organization in regards to strategy, measurement, performance management, employee level or performance culture, to assess, because in this crucial moment you might end up deciding how the evolution of the project should look like. For instance, in case you discover under the audit for the strategy part that there is a strategy in place within the organization, they've been working with strategic objectives, and you might end up realizing there is no need to develop it from zero, from scratch, because there is something that exists. So you might end up, given the results of the audit, in minimizing the activities, for instance, in the 4th cluster, which is related to strategy, either defining the strategy or reviewing the strategy. That would be the purpose of the audit. That's when you give also a clear dimension to the project, to the KPI implementation project, depending on the findings that you have in here. But of course, when there is nothing in within the organization related to performance, which might end up happening, maybe not so often, at the end of the day, people realize they are measuring something or they are triggered by something that has been previously defined as desired, even though they don't call it maybe a scorecard, a KPI, or a portfolio of initiatives, but there is something. In that case, when there is nothing sketched, we are taking it from the first to the last step, and that's how extensive the methodology can be in practice, exactly as you see it displayed in this image. The project preparation and the project initiation, these are parts of, let's say, managing the project itself. I would emphasize a little on the team assigned that belongs to the organization. There is a team, in our case, a team of consultants that is allocated to do the offsite work or the on-site work, but most of the times we ask for a dedicated team that is part of the client organization the moment we start doing this, because there is still a need, a real need for internal efforts and internal resources to be dedicated the moment we implement the KPI project. Going on the system design side, which is the blue color in our case, here we have the strategy definition or strategy review. As I've told you, it depends on the case. Following with the KPI selection, documentation, and alignment. This would be the system design. What we are doing in all these stages is creating the design of the system that is going to be implemented or actually activated in the upcoming stage within the organization, the design from the top to the bottom. The approach being displayed in here is a top-down approach, starting from the corporate or the organizational, the strategic level, going down to operational or departmental, divisional, if you would like to call it so, divisional level, and it ultimately ends up with the employee level. Later on, I will explain to you some of the insights related to our methodology in regard to these levels, because things tend to become a little more different and maybe also a little more complicated or more complex in the alignment and cascading part, but we will also get there. As part of the system activation, we take into account the data collection or data gathering, having in place the systems that are able to give us the data that we've been designing to have in the previous stage. Data visualization and analysis and reporting in order to enable our decision-making process, because ultimately what we are doing on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, ideally is to make the right decisions that are gonna get us closer to the desired state, that are gonna take us closer to that performance that we are envisioning. As part of the last activities, the project closure, we end up with the performance management manual. Ideally, it summarizes everything that has happened as part of performance management: tools, procedures, processes, responsibles, everything that has been generated in the previous stages, and of course the takeaways and the evaluation report. So that's how it would look like from the beginning, from the first step to the 14th step. That is encompassing the world of KPI implementation projects. Now, taking them one by one, just briefly to understand a little this sequence and how do we do this and what does it contain. I will start with the audit. And this performance maturity audit is designed to identify the gaps between let's say maturity levels, either 1 or 5, to identify these gaps in order to be closed. It enables an organizational shift to the next maturity level in case you decide to follow up on the activities that have resulted out of this. As a methodology, it captures both evidence-based documents analysis and perception-based activities, surveys, and interviews that we have with your organizational stakeholders. And it can be accessed either as a capability, per capability, which is one out of the 5 displayed: strategic planning, performance measurement, management, performance culture, and employee performance management, or as the total integrated audit that is going to give us the whole image and the whole current state, not just one of these. Of course, if we decided in the upcoming year with a client we are not going to be able to dedicate the time and the financial efforts as well to go for all the 5 of these, we can just choose one and have it as a starting point. So this would be it with in terms of auditing. As part of project preparation, the communication and the awareness and the project initiation that should happen. For instance, I think this is a critical, even though it looks very administrative, it's too operational to give a certain importance, but I find it as being critical because things might go wrong in here. It's the starting point of the project, it's the very beginning, the first moment that employees find out organizational intentions of having such a project. It's because we are working with people, and it makes our job a little more difficult than other contexts. I'm saying it's crucial because at some point I've been attending such a, for instance, as part of the awareness and training campaigns, we had a meeting, a discussion to inform the employees about the project that is going to be deployed and how it would look like, what's in it for each and every employee. And all of a sudden, the general manager appears in front of everyone saying that we're going to do this and that, and we're going to have KPIs, we're going to have the traffic light colors, you know, the green, the yellow, and the red. But just a few seconds after this high engagement, he just got it wrong, saying to everyone in the room that he would like to have this project deployed because it would be very nice to identify the low performers, ultimately, like the people with constant red results that are afterwards gonna be most probably eliminated from the organization, which is like, okay, taking it easy. That's not the purpose of KPI implementation projects. The purpose is exactly as I've been sharing with you previously, to have it clear where we are, where we want to be, and to do the improvement to get there, not the elimination of people that might support us in getting there. So it's important to take care of this because it can give a healthy foundation to the project itself. Going to the system design, most probably, if you have opted to attend this webinar, you had something to do, or at least some thoughts related to performance management or to KPI implementation. What do we do as part of the strategy cluster is analyzing where we are at the moment, like our current strategic directions, conducting the environmental scan, which is a pastel analysis, the SWOT analysis, as well as a brief secondary research in order to be able to define or either review our mission, vision, and values that are going to take live in the tools that we are operating with, which are the desired state of evolution, the strategy map, and of course the portfolio of initiatives, the portfolio of projects to be integrated in and detailed that are gonna take place. So this would be an example of all the things that we can encompass as part of the strategy. Of course, if there is a strategy, we just review the current strategy and we move on to like reviewing the objectives and defining the KPIs if there are not KPIs. But as a complete way of approaching it, that would be it. I'm not going to insist too much on the examples in here. You can see an environmental scan that we've been doing for a communication regulator agency in Southeast Asia. You are gonna anyway receive the materials, and you can go a little more in depth with each and every of these. As part of the KPI selection, which is the next cluster of activities addressed in the project plan, here what we are doing is like the main point of this category would be the KPI selection workshop. That would be the face-to-face moment that is the core of KPI selection. Within this workshop, we are selecting the KPIs for the objectives that have been previously defined or reviewed. That's when we put the key in front of indicators. That's when we talk about focus. That's when the focus is happening. Identifying the right and the most relevant KPIs for the strategic objectives of the organization, either public or private. And of course, in this moment, we're gonna establish who is responsible of each and every indicator, and as well to identify the custodians, like who is in charge of the data for these results. On the right side, what you have is a preview of a scorecard. That's that's the tool that will end up being populated along with the dashboard that is on the left side as part of this workshop, as part of the workshop. On one hand, the scorecard includes the KPIs in relation to the objectives. On the other side, we have the dashboards with that include KPIs grouped around the clusters, relevant clusters or processes, mostly that support the achievement of the KPIs on the scorecard. So these would be the two main tools to be generated as part of the KPI selection. What comes next is the KPI documentation. The KPI documentation is again a moment that is not very complex, and because it's not very complex, people have the tendency of skipping it. But complex doesn't necessarily mean also as well important. It is important. Personally, I have been through some trainings. I've asked because they were in-house training courses. I've been asking people about some of the KPIs they were having in the scorecard, like talking with the manager, with the management team, and I'm asking, what does this mean, HHI index from your scorecard? Do you have a KPI with this name, for instance? As an external, I have no idea what it might mean, what it might end up meaning to you. But I was quite curious because we were talking about documenting the KPIs, and all of a sudden I see that I can't get an answer in the training room on what they were measuring at that moment. They had the system in place, it was rolled out, it was perfectly functional, but guess what? Even after a while, they had no idea what does this mean. So the KPI documentation, even though it's not very complex, like you just need to fill a standard KPI documentation form, a standardized KPI documentation form with some details. It doesn't necessarily have to be the 50 fields or 50 more that we have in our standard template, but just selecting the most important ones, such as the KPI name, definition, calculation formula, the part of the targets, and the administration, at least the 5 fields to be documented as an initial version, and make it clear for everyone that has to do with these KPIs. What does it mean, and how do we end up with how did we end up with these KPIs? One critical aspect in here as part of documentation is setting up the target, which is a topic itself, which is a drama itself, not just a topic. In this moment of the KPI documentation, we also might end up conducting secondary research studies or benchmarking studies to, in order to be able to come up with some initial relevant targets for the KPIs previously selected. Closing up the KPI documentation with the moment of alignment. It's both the alignment from organizational or cascading, if you would like to put it so, from organizational to departmental level, and as well from departmental to employee level. What we are doing now is based on the scorecard that has been previously developed in the KPI selection phase, that has been documented as per the KPIs in the KPI documentation. Here, we are building up the next managerial level of the organization, which we consider as having departmental in our example. The methodology itself might look simple. Personally, I find this as being one of the most complex processes associated to KPIs, to performance management, because you need to do some magic in several places, and you need, because now the discussion is not top level. Now you face the real challenges of the people operating with daily tasks, processes, and activities, not with the ones claiming for the results. You are the one talking now with the ones generating those results, and things become a little more complicated in their perspective, like how should we end up with these KPIs in their scorecards. I'm taking the example of the scorecard because this is the main tool that gets cascaded down so that you can have a metrics or a distribution, a total distribution of the performance that has been sketched at strategic level. When it goes to employee level, so from departmental to employee level, our approach is the following. We don't just take into account, for instance, in the employee appraisals, we don't encourage to take into account the moment you talk about performance results, just the results of the KPIs. What we are doing at employee level only, we add the competencies and the desired behaviors. They get associated. As you have seen in the previous scorecards, we are not using a weighting system for the KPIs within the scorecard. What we are using here is the weighting system for the elements that are gonna be encompassed in the individual evaluation. For instance, the KPI results, as per my previous experience, usually clients have chosen to have the KPIs to a 70%. Contribution in the overall result. The competencies and the behaviors usually are half and half, like 15 and 15%. But at some point, I've been working with an organization. They have decided to give the 80% to the scorecard and 20% to competencies only. They were not working with behaviors at that moment. They were working with only with competencies. So they distributed 100% only to these two aspects, but they had an action plan to integrate as well the behaviors as an element to individual level. So ultimately, it ended up with 3 elements. That's what makes it specific in our case, in our methodology, in our approach of concluding with the PMS design, with the performance management system design. When it comes to data gathering, things become a little more technical. Because you now create the systems that are gathering the data, each and every result for the KPIs previously selected. On the right side, you have the data gathering process map. So that's the flow that should happen on a monthly basis, for instance, in case you would like to really have a monthly meeting to discuss about performance results. On the left side, you have the data gathering template, which is the support document. In case there is no BI solution and you just work with Excel to collect the data, that would be it. In case there is a BI, and here we can talk about data visualization, what we promote is the quick score of Spider Strategies as a software solution to display the KPI results. We are also taking care of the configuration of quick score within the client organizations. And yeah, initially, in case we work with the Excel, and we go to the quick score, but otherwise we prefer to go also directly to the quick score. On the right side, you have the magic quadrant of Gartner with the BI options, in case you are interested to explore which ones have been ranked in their evaluation. Now, going to the analysis, decision-making and learning and improvement, these are coming hand in hand because the design has ended, the data collection has ended. So this flow is sort of it becomes a regular process, and it's a reporting process that we most probably have in place within organizations, regardless of the fact that they refer to performance or not. So most probably these are happening. The focus would be the performance review meeting that I would like to emphasize on. The performance review meeting, we encourage it to happen on a monthly basis. So not just saying that we have a performance management system, it is in place, but it still remains on paper. To activate it, to give it life through the performance review meetings, and that's when you make the best decisions in order to close the gap between actual and desired performance. The project, the KPI implementation project, is closing, as I've told you, with presenting the outputs, the project takeaways, and most of the times we integrate all the knowledge that has gained from the organization with this project in a performance management manual. In here, we find the tools that have been designed and activated. As you can see in this example, that has been extracted from a methanol producing company. There are the organizational scorecard, the departmental scorecards, the documentation forms, and everything that has been covered up to this moment with the implementation plan. So that would be the whole image from the first to the 14th step, and a little few details about each and every of these. Starting it again from the first from the project preparation. What I would like here is to give a little more some more examples of the key deliverables. For instance, as you remember, the audit is the first thing that we are conducting. In this case, there is an example from IT systems and a company supporting a bank, a group banking with IT systems and apps. In Sweden, we've been conducting an audit for them, and it ends up with an executive dashboard. It ends up with a roadmap associated in order to cover the gaps that have been identified. As part of project preparation and initiations, we can go with roll-ups, with posters. As in this case, we have the medical, we had in the medical industry in healthcare. The moment they started the KPI project plan, they decided to make it visible amongst employees and expose all these materials to increase the awareness. As part of the system, as the system design, we have a preview of a scorecard, which I've told you is maybe the key tool that is not only planning performance, but it also creates the magic of between planning and acting in performance context, which belongs to a holding in UAE that we've been recently working on. Or it can take the shape of a strategy map, which in this case, for infrastructure projects, it becomes a little more user-friendly. On the other side is documentation from a financial investment organization. That's how they look like, and that's how they look like in practice, in organizational reality. We have some models. We have the models that belong to our methodology, but in here, the models get populated with relevant data for each and every organization that we are working with. Here is the moment when the theory becomes practice, and is the moment when we guide them along the way in defining their main performance-related outputs. In this example, this is an insurance company in Vietnam that illustrates the flow of events, the cascading part from organizational to divisional level and as well individual level. It's an insurance company where we have reviewed the organizational level. It was just a review only because they already have operated the PMS system beforehand. Then we went in piloting two divisions. It was the Human Resources Division and the Marine Insurance Division as one of their most important divisions. As you can see, there is one profit-oriented, the Marine Insurance Division, and the Human Resources Division that belongs to the functional areas. We wanted to explore both so that the company understands the methodology on how to do this so they can replicate it afterwards. This is again a principle that we can work on. Getting the pilot, so not involving the whole organization in the KPI implementation project plan. We don't go hand in hand with them, but we teach them on how to create, how to mature the project, and the organization is afterwards generating the outputs, the deliverables, and so on. So in this case, we've been just piloting for two divisions and then cascading the division level to individual level. We have just extracted some examples from the employees that belonged to these departments. On the other side, there is a moment when, and most probably the project managers that have been taking this responsibility so far, is the moment when you need to make it visible for the management. Like, what do we get from this? Where did we end up with the implementation of the project? How does this really fit in our cost benefits realization plans? Well, as you can see in the photos in here, there was a moment associated with visualizing what has happened in terms to KPI implementation. It was a moment that the CEO of the organization has joined us to show the results, and we got extremely positive feedback from his side, supporting the pilot project and supporting as well their internal team in implementing this across the whole organization. This is the recent a recent example we have been working on. It's part of the decision making, is part of the learning and improvement, and for us as the KPI Institute, it meant the project closure as well. Not making it any longer, I would like now to go to some brief examples that reflect the time perspective of such a project. Like, how do we know if it should take 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years? Well, we have a Gantt preview in here, which includes the top level, like the strategic level, the operational, which you can associate as departmental level, and as well the individual level. It can be comprised in 3 months. Personally, as per what I have seen, people need time to digest these ideas. Employees really need time to digest, why are we doing this? How is this going to help us? There is, of course, an extra effort that will fall on their shoulders the moment we start doing this, because it will be necessary to ask them to activate some KPIs, to collect data, to report data, to generate scorecards, so on and so forth. So it's a matter of also understanding what is the actual workload of the employees that we are still gonna fight with during this implementation, and understanding also the alignment of this project with the rest of the projects within the organization. It can take 3 months, but you will see that it can also take up to 3 years. In this case, we have been implementing within 2 years such a performance management system based on KPIs. We started with the first phase. As actual days that we've been working with them, there are just 5 or 20 or 13, as you will be able to see. But overall in the project, there's not just our part. It also implies some of the organization's, client organizations, employees' effort. So that's why I can't just say that it can take just 3 weeks, because after the 3 weeks, the client organization will need to work 1 month as a follow-up to the 3 weeks that we are spending on site. So that's why the dimension, the actual dimension, is just reflected through the perspective of the on-site days that we are spending with the client organization. In this case, we have also configured the software solution. It took, for instance, just to give you a glimpse on the dimension, on sizing the project. For 16 strategy maps, it takes around 2 days to be configured, or for scorecards and dashboards, it can get less as per the day, or more as per the actual day to be consumed. In their case, we have added the communication campaign and awareness and educational part for their employees. So it also took place and efforts, and ultimately it ended up with the individual level, which of course gets a little more extensive time as per the time wise, because now we talk about job families. And we don't just have 10 departments. We multiply the departments with the scope of work. Like we would like to talk to 3 job families or positions for each department. It means a minimum of 30 positions that require our time. To zoom this out, that's the image on how KPI implementation project would look like for an organization. At the corporate level, let's say we have a scorecard with objectives and KPIs, then we go to the subunits, the units and subunits in order to create their tools. Here we have both scorecards and dashboards. When you say, let's define our objectives and KPIs, it might sound like a 2 hours discussion or something like this. But the moment you would like to envision this image of the whole organization having these defined, reviewed, agreed, and also approved, you will understand that it ultimately takes a little more time than you have imagined or planned. Another example is an example from a financial services organization we've been working with in the Middle East, which was a little smaller as per the number of employees, but it had a little more reach in regards to the impact of the activity. We have started here with an audit, which I would like not to detail too much because of the time constraint. It started with the audit, then we've done the strategic review and KPI selection. You can see here some of the tools and some of the ideas we ended up with. This is the top level. Then we went from the top level to departmental level, to departmental review and KPI selection for each and every. We ended up as you can see in here with the scorecards with the tools. I would like not to go too much in depth with this, because you anyway will have the materials and you can explore the specific of these. But just to understand the image and the efforts from the perspective of the whole plan on what does it contain, and as well ending up with the individual scorecards. In the first case study that I've shown to you, there was no audit. There was a component of education, awareness, and strategy communication, which is not present in here. And this is a little more extensive given the fact that it has the audit. So they are quite different as per the components, but you can explore as well from the subcomponents differences as well. Now, when it comes to stakeholders and governance, since this sounds huge, it sounds huge, at least to envision the realization of all the tools that we've been through, and maybe not all the stages, but at least half of the stages, you can understand. It doesn't only take time, but it also takes internal resources to be consumed and taken care of. What we are recommending most of the times is to have a dedicated internal team in charge of designing and implementing and as well maintaining this system, because the moment we end up let's say the 2 years or 3 years relation or maybe 1 year relation with the organization, it still has to continue. So they will need to know how to maintain what we have created together, and to have this in a dedicated capability with dedicated knowledge that will ultimately need to be supported by the top management, not as in the example that I have offered to you at the beginning of the webinar. And of course, to acknowledge the contribution of most of the times departmental managers. They will need to work with the results, with the targets, with the decisions to be proposed to the top management, and collecting and reporting the data for the KPIs. So acknowledging that there are different efforts that could be separated as per jobs and the responsibilities within the organization would be the first step. We call this the performance management office. Uh, it can be the yes, strategic planning office or the vision realization office, as it is now more popular in being named. However you would like to put it, we recommend it to have an operating model, an engagement model that should capture the mechanisms and the relationship with the stakeholders, and as well the structure and the process maps. But since this team is a little more different than the rest of the departments within the organization, a specific competencies and behaviors framework we are sketching for them. So we make sure with this that the team has the necessary competencies and the level of competencies that are requested from them. Data analysis, maybe technology related skills, since they are going to work with a BI solution, or maybe the strategic related and the people related skills and competencies. Now, this being said, I hope you didn't get too scared of implementing such a project in case you don't have one, or I hope that the ones that already perform in a PMS got some ideas on where do they lack in at the moment, and ideas on what can be changed in the upcoming future. It's not easy to do this, but personally I think it worthwhile. So given the part of not being easy, you can complain on and yes, board yourselves on that, but on the part of does it really worth the efforts, I personally do say with all my confidence that yes, it really worthwhile. Yeah, not making it any longer at this moment. I hope you have some questions to address given the presentation of this methodology that we are applying, or maybe to just to double validate, to double check, to validate some of the ideas that might have aroused in during the presentation.
Thank you very much, Raluca, for your presentation. And moving on to our Q&A session, during your presentation, we've received the first one already. So in your opinion and in your experience, how long would it take for such an implementation project to be able to deliver KPI results or KPI-related information to the management team?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Andre, for the question. So in regards to how long, well, I would recall the part of the Gantt chart. So it can take, in our case, in our previous proposals, 3 months to get there. But it's really important to conduct the audit to see how people are going to receive this as part of performance culture, let's say. Are they ready to get this? Because the system can be rolled out, the system can be designed, it can be activated, but to make it functional, to build up people's trust in such a system, it might involve the necessity of making it a little longer than the 3 months. It can go up to 3 months, but what we need to take into account is also the human element and how ready an organization is to receive it. On the other hand, we had a case studies where it took 2 years to get it done and to be able to deliver the results. But this is a different scenario. The speed of the desire of the organization, I can say it's it's slightly different in these cases.
All right. Moving on to the second question. How do you ensure the leader does not think this process is too overwhelming when you first introduce the idea?
Yeah, this is a critical moment when you introduce the project to people. It might end up being introduced in an organization or in a system that regularly says, "Oh, look, there is a new project coming in," or "From now on, we are going to change this." Given the fact that we are living in a constantly changing business environment, what I can say is that initially, and that's the manager's side or the manager's role. Initially, I would say for people to believe in, for managers to understand that there is an extra effort. I would personally recommend, and I've told this to certain several managers I've been working with, it's important to renounce to some of the tasks, suspend some of the activities. Of course, you will not be able to stop production, but at least try to give 2 hours a week to the people that are going to work with this, 2 hours a week maybe, or 3 hours a week. Give people time to reflect on this, give people time to digest it, give people time to collect the data for the scorecards that you've been developing in such a beautiful manner, in a beautiful design. It takes time. So personally, I've seen this as the first rejection being the one, the time-wise, time-related. So suspend, put on hold, create a delay in other aspects, in other projects or initiatives in order to fit this project in. Because ultimately, it's like a regular project. It takes time, it takes effort.
Okay. Moving on to another question. Who would be responsible to develop the KPIs for the departmental and individual levels? I know you mentioned earlier information about the Vision Realization Office and so on, but are there any individuals in particular within an organization necessary, or can anyone within the organization take up this task? Raluca, can you hear me? We seem to have encountered a few technical issues with the internet connection. So unfortunately, we've seemed to have stumbled upon a few technical issues regarding both the internet connection and Ralucan's sound hardware. And if she doesn't manage to fix it in a few moments, then we will unfortunately have to end the Q&A session abruptly. However, that being said, we do have all of the questions you've asked, and you will receive answers to all of your questions later, either today or at the most tomorrow. So none of the questions you've posed will go unanswered. You'll receive in-depth answers for everything you've asked. Also, due to the fact that many people aren't aware, you will also receive a copy of the webinar's presentation slides. So you'll be able to review all of the points that Raluca has made. It seems she cannot fix her audio issues right now, so this brings us to a very unfortunate and abrupt end to the webinar. We highly appreciate your interest and your joining us today, and we apologize for ending it on in a very abrupt manner. That being said, we do encourage you to follow our websites and our social media channels to find out more details about our next webinars whenever they get posted. If you're interested in getting a certification granted by the KPI Institute or any of our services or products, you can explore them on marketplace.kpiinstitute.org. We apologize once again for the technical issues, and we thank you very much for your participation.